Harry's wife. She's hanging him out to dry. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. As you know, and you really ought to know by now as keen students of my work, the narcissist only cares about one person, ourselves. Our narcissism causes us to act with a sense of entitlement, to never be accountable, to seek control over people, to nullify potential threats to control, to fail to recognize boundaries, to act without emotional empathy. And this is all because we pursue the prime aims: asserting control and nullifying control threats, drawing fuel from people, gaining character traits and residual benefits. And our narcissism, to put it crudely, doesn't give a shit about anybody to enable us to get those things. There are lots of different ways we go about getting those things, which varies, of course, as a consequence of the type of narcissist that you're dealing with. Some narcissists are like wrecking balls. They'll come and basically smash you in the face to get those things. Others pretend to be your friends. Others pretend to care. And they actually do think that they care, but they don't, because their actions demonstrate that they do not. Nevertheless, every single narcissist would ensure that if there was only one lifeboat left, they would be in it and you'd be left on the Titanic as it sank. Harry doesn't realize that he's involved with the narcissist. Harry doesn't realize that it's making him look really bad with all of the disclosures that are coming from Spare, which he thought would be him telling his story, setting the record straight, enabling him to gain closure. But what's actually happening is he's being hung out to dry by Harry's wife. Notice that he's being encouraged to do these interviews. It's him, front and centre. She's not even there in a supportive role. Some might say, well, why would she be there? After all, it's him's memoir, not her memoir. But the fact is, he talks about how she has encouraged him, that she was the one that made him realize that he was trapped. The reason that she's not involved is that her narcissism recognizes that in this instance, it's better to stay away. Better to stay away than be associated with it. Remember, Harry's in sustained devaluation, which means that other than instances where it suits her to put on a united front, the rest of the time, she'll let him stick his head above the parapet and take the fire, and she's nowhere to be seen. So he's done these two interviews with ITV and 60 Minutes. We've seen the teaser trailers for them. The leaks which have occurred. This, as you can see with the responses and the media coverage, does not paint a favourable picture for him. Oh dear. Now, of course, she still gets some flack because the enlightened amongst us realise that as a consequence of her narcissism, she still continues to puppet him, that she has her hand up his backside, that she's caused him to write the things that he has written. But there'll be others who just look at it and think, Harry, you're a despicable turd. You're an arsehole. And he cops all of this flack, making him an unlikable individual, showing him to be haughty, arrogant, unfeeling. The comments that were made about the members of the Taliban wouldn't reflect well on the army. More about that in due course. Notice, for instance, the disclosure about the wearing of the Nazi uniform. They made me do it. She has allowed him to bring up something from 18 years ago, continue to bang on about it, but try and suggest, of course, that it's not his fault, that it's the fault of the one that got away and the nemesis. But by the same token, it doesn't make him look good for two reasons. It reminds people of this stupid act in the first place, but it also makes him look like a despicable coward by trying to blame his brother and sister-in-law. Whilst these disclosures suit her for the purposes of smearing members of the royal family to get indirect control over them, It's not making Harry look good at all. It's causing more people to dislike him, and it's painting a picture of him. For instance, the tittle-tattle that's been in there. Oh, broke my necklace. And he said, she said, revolving things around lip gloss. More on that later. The comments about baby brain. No man would write about that waffle. Many women wouldn't either. It's utter anodyne dross, yet it's included because it serves two purposes. One, it allows Harry's wife to strike back at the nemesis by painting her as not very nice and thus smearing her. But it also makes Harry look a dick for banging on about such a triviality. It makes him seem weak, cowardly, petty. And of course, this suits Harry's wife because she can use him as a useful idiot to assert control over the members of the royal family, whilst causing Harry to draw fire, so that at the appropriate juncture, when she disengages from him, which is the most likely outcome, sympathy will have been eroded for him because people will say, well, he deserves everything he got, shacking up with that mare, and he's a wanker anyway. Whilst I recognise, of course, that his emotional empathy has been eroded as a consequence of the abuse that he's been subjected to, and that the manipulations have heightened his own unpleasant traits, because he does have them, no doubt about it, alongside some very good ones. But the point is, all we're seeing at the moment is hateful Harry, horrid Henry, Harry the twat. And that works for her, because it creates in the mind of the public that actually, this chap isn't very nice, is he? And all the good aspects that he has that we all knew about from before will be forgotten about. Now understand, this isn't a planned act by her to create this for the future. It's a collateral consequence of her narcissism. But what her narcissism is doing at the moment is this: using him to assert control over the secondary sources in the royal family, whilst at the same time avoiding accountability by not being seen to be involved in it herself, even though those of us who understand what she is know that she's heavily involved. But at this moment in time, it allows that indirect assertion of control without actually being in the front line, without sticking her head above the parapet, which enables her to nullify threats to control by, in essence, going, oh, this is Harry's story. He's a big boy now. This is all his grievances. So essentially, if you've got a problem with what he's writing, take it up with him. Nothing to do with me. Oh, he's the one doing the interviews. Those are his words. Of course, we know they're not. But it allows her to create some plausibility, deniability by going, oh, this is Haz's adventure now. It also, in the way that unaware narcissists do, allows the narcissism at a later juncture to revisit what has happened now for its own benefit, in the same way that I have talked about how ad hoc smearing makes it look like a campaign, and how a narcissist will do something in the moment to assert control, and then months later the narcissist will revisit that moment and make use of it, almost looking in the box of tricks and going, what have we got that could, oh yes, I know, our narcissist left his jumper because he's a lazy sod at the victim's house. Let's use that as a pretext for getting in contact, and thus we can hoover. He didn't at that juncture, because he's an unaware narcissist, deliberately leave that jumper in order to create a pretext 3 months in the future. No, he left it because he has no sense of accountability and just left his stuff. But here we are 3 months later, and we're looking at how we can assert control over this victim who's come back up on the radar. We look in the box of tricks. Ah, yes, we now remember that a jumper was left. So similarly, her narcissism, as at the point when disengagement is likely to occur, will be able to make use of the fact that she has hung him out to dry through asserting control in the moment by having little to do or nothing to do with these revelations. So that at a later juncture, she will say, well, he's not very nice. Look what I had to put up with him. Hey, you all know this. Look how he went on in his autobiography. Look how he went on in those interviews, bringing up the past and using them against Harry. Harry is being very much hung out to dry. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.